Westerly with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and welcome to today's webinar, which is hosted by the Clean Energy Solutions Center and the International Energy Agency. And today's webinar is focused on the finding from IEA's new publication, Technology Roadmap, Energy Storage, which looks at the role of energy storage technologies within our future energy systems. And one important note of mention before we begin our presentations is that the Clean Energy Solutions Center does not endorse or recommend specific products or services. Information provided in this webinar is featured in the Solutions Center's resource library as one of many best practices resources reviewed and selected by technical experts. And before we begin, I'll quickly go over some of the webinar features. For audio, you have two options. You may either listen through your computer or over your telephone. If you choose to listen through your computer, please select the mic and speakers option in the audio pane. Doing so will eliminate the possibility of feedback and echo. If you choose to dial in by phone, please select the telephone option, and a box on the right side will display the telephone number and audio pin you should use to dial in. Panelists, we ask that you please mute your audio device while you are not presenting. And if anyone is having technical difficulties with the webinar, you may contact the GoToWebinar's help desk at the number at the bottom of the slide, which is 888-259-3826. And if you'd like to ask a question, simply use the questions pane where you may type in your question. And if you're having difficulty viewing the material through the webinar portal, we will be posting PDF copies of the presentations at cleanenergysolutions.org/training, and you may follow along as our speakers present. Also, an audio recording of the presentations will be posted to the Solutions Center training page within about a week of the today's webinar. And today's webinar agenda features presentations from our guest panelists, Didier Husson and Cecilia Tam. These expert panelists have been kind enough to join us to discuss the IEA's Energy Storage Technology Roadmap, which aims to increase understanding amongst stakeholders of the applications that electricity and thermal energy storage technologies can be used for at different locations in the energy system, provide a comprehensive discussion of the nature, function, and cost of energy storage technologies, identify the most important actions required in the short and long term to successfully accelerate the development and deployment of energy storage technologies, and articulate actions to support progress towards short and long-term goals. And before our speakers begin their presentations, I'll provide a short, informative overview of the Clean Energy Solutions Center initiative. And then following the presentations, we will have a question-answer session where the panelists will address questions submitted by the audience, followed by some closing remarks and a very brief survey. Now, this slide provides a bit of background in terms of how the Solutions Center came to be. The Solutions Center is an initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial and is supported through a partnership with UN Energy. It was launched in April of 2011. It's primarily led by Australia, the United States, and other CEM partners. Outcomes of this unique partnership include support of developing countries through enhancement of resources on policies relating to energy access, no-cost expert policy assistance, and peer-to-peer learning and training tools such as the webinar you are attending today. And there are 4 primary goals for the Solutions Center. It serves as a clearinghouse of clean energy policy resources, also serves to share policy best practices, data and analysis tools specific to clean energy policies and programs. The Solutions Center delivers dynamic services that enables expert assistance, learning, and peer-to-peer sharing of experiences. And lastly, the Center fosters dialogue on emerging policy issues and innovation around the globe. Our primary audience is energy policy makers and analysts from governments and technical organizations in all countries, but we also strive to engage with the private sector, NGOs, and civil society. And a marquee service that the Solutions Center provides is its Expert Policy Assistance Program, known as Ask an Expert. Through the Ask an Expert program, the Solutions Center has established a broad team of over 30 experts from around the globe who are available to provide remote policy advice and analysis to all countries at no cost. So, for example, in the area of finance and sustainable energy planning, we are very pleased to have Wilson Rickerson, the CEO of Meister Consultants Group, serving as our expert. So if you have a need for policy assistance on finance and sustainable energy planning or any other clean energy sector, we encourage you to use this useful service. Again, this assistance is provided free of charge. To request assistance, simply submit your request by registering through our Ask an Expert feature at cleanenergysolutions.org /expert. We also invite you to spread the word about this service to those in your networks and organizations. So in summary, we encourage you to explore and take advantage of the Solution Center resources and services, including the Expert Policy Assistance, the database of clean energy policy resources, subscribe to our newsletter, and participate in webinars like this. And now I'd like to provide brief introductions for our distinguished panelists. Our first speaker today is Didier Hussin, the Director of Sustainable Energy Policy and Technology at the International Energy Agency. And our next speaker following Didier, we will hear from Cecilia Tam, the head of the Energy Demand Unit at the International Energy Agency, where she also leads the IEA's Energy Technology Roadmaps program. And then we will also be joined today during the question-answer session of the webinar by Melissa Lott from the International Energy Agency. Melissa has worked as an energy systems engineer and consultant for more than 10 years in both the U.S. and Europe. And so with those brief introductions, please join me in welcoming Didier to the webinar.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the Clean Energy Solutions Center and NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, for collaborating with us at the IEA today to launch this new technology roadmap on energy storage. I'd like to point out that this one is the 20th energy technology roadmap since the program was started in 2008. This publication that we are releasing today outlines how energy storage technologies can support the decarbonization of the energy sector and the transition to a low-carbon economy. Energy storage technologies, including both large and centralized systems, but also small and distributed systems, can bridge the gaps between energy supply and demand. Their uses are not limited to supporting variable renewable generation, and rather they can also help to optimize many parts of the global energy system. The roadmap work is based in this roadmap, like for the others, on the IEA's low-carbon ETP scenarios. These scenarios that are presented in detail in our flagship book on technology, energy technology perspective, outline how we can limit global temperature increases to 2 degrees Celsius by halving energy-related emissions by 50% in 2050 compared to 2009 levels. I'd like to take this opportunity to mention that this roadmap is based on our ETP 2014 numbers that will be presented next May in the sidelines of the Clean Energy Ministerial in Seoul. And also I would like to highlight that ETP 2014 will update the scenarios, but also take a special look at the important role of electricity in our energy system. And thus it will include a special chapter of the role of storage in the electricity system and how it compares against competing technologies such as grid infrastructure, dispatchable generation, and demand-side management. But let me come back to the roadmap process. We have developed this roadmap process in 2009 in close cooperation with a variety of stakeholders, including key governments, industry, and research partners. These roadmaps are developed with the aim of developing a strategy to accelerate the development and deployment of a given technology by 2050. They try to answer 3 broad questions. First, where is the technology today? Second, where do we want to go in the long term? Third, what are the priority actions that are needed to accelerate the development and deployment of a given technology? So first, the roadmap identifies the technology baseline based on cooperation of a variety of experts to understand where we are today. We then use our modeling tool to identify the growth pathway to achieve this technology's contribution to the overall mitigation portfolio in 2050. We then identify barriers to fully realizing this potential. And finally, the roadmap includes a set of actions and milestones to guide implementation. So what are the key points when we look at the role of storage in the energy system? In a nutshell, they can help to better integrate our electricity and heat systems and can play a crucial role in energy system decarbonization by doing a series of things, improving energy system resource use efficiency, helping to integrate higher levels of reliable renewable resources and end-use sector electrification. It can also support greater production of energy where it is consumed. It can also increase energy access across the world and improve electricity grid stability, flexibility, and reliability, as well as resilience. Let me now hand over to Cecilia for the key findings of the roadmap.
Thank you very much, Didier. What I'd like to do now is really take everyone through the main features of our energy storage roadmap. One of the aims of this document was to provide a better understanding to a range of different stakeholders of the application that electricity and thermal storage technologies could be used for in different locations of the energy system. The figure in front of you shows what could be some hypothetical storage deployments across the different electricity power systems. And as you can see here, we see that a variety of both electricity and thermal storage technologies can be deployed in the demand, transmission and distribution, and supply areas of the electricity and energy system. Starting on the bottom, if we look at demand or the end-use level, there are a number of technologies such as small-scale batteries, underground thermal energy storage, and hot water heaters with storage that are used to improve efficiency in the energy system. Then at the transmission and distribution level, there are flywheels and a variety of battery options that can be used. And then finally, at the supply or generation level, we have pumped storage hydropower and molten salts with CSP, just to name a few examples of how this variety of storage technologies can be used to better integrate our electricity and heat systems. As we discussed, the storage technologies that are being developed and that are available are used for address a wide range of different applications. The figure here shows which applications the different electricity or thermal storage technologies can be used to address. So if we look from time-wise at very short-term applications, there's a number of different technologies that can be very useful to address frequency regulation, demand shifting, or integration of variable electricity supply, which require response times at the level of minutes or less. They can also be used to help defer investments in transmission and distribution or for congestion relief and arbitrage, up to much longer-term storage needs for seasonal storage. Today, we have already about 140 gigawatts of large-scale storage, which is currently installed in our electricity grids worldwide. The majority of that, about 99%, comes from pumped storage hydropower technologies, as you can see in the figure here. The remaining 1% is a mix of battery technologies, compressed air energy storage, and flywheels. The roadmap covers quite a large spectrum of these electricity and thermal storage technologies, and as you can see in this figure, storage technologies cover quite a wide range of maturity levels. The figure before you tries to map out the maturity levels of this wide basket of both electricity and thermal technologies, from very mature technologies such as pumped storage hydro to cold water storage and underground thermal energy storage, to less advanced and more demonstration and employment level technologies, which includes quite a wide spectrum of battery technology, to less mature technologies such as CMESs, hydrogen, and thermochemical technologies. What we've strived to do in the roadmap is really to provide a comprehensive overview of the current status of a number of these technologies. Some of the information that is available in the roadmap include tables that try to summarize really where these different technologies can play a role, what are their efficiencies, investment costs that are required for the technologies, and we also include some project examples. An important part of the technology roadmap is what we've called the technology annex, which goes into quite a lot of details of the project examples that you see listed in this table here. So we are looking at quite a broad spectrum of technologies, to very mature technologies such as pump storage hydro and underground thermal storage, to less mature technologies including quite a wide array of batteries, including things such as lithium-based batteries, sodium sulfur and lead acid batteries, and ice storage, to much less mature technologies that are only really at the early R&D stage, such as supercapacitors and superconducting magnetic energy storage and thermochemical storage technologies. So what we've tried to do is really provide additional examples that can be investigated by the readers to have a better understanding of the characteristics of this wide spectrum of energy storage technologies. These examples include quite interesting and mature technologies such as the use of hot water heaters in France that are very effective at reducing peak demand, to examples in China where they have at the Shanghai Pudong Airport a cold water storage system that helps them reduce their electricity consumption, so using cold water storage for cooling purposes instead of consuming a lot of electricity. And then finally, just another example of sodium sulfur batteries that are used in Texas to increase reliability and help to defer investments in transmission and distribution. So I encourage everyone to go online to download this technology annex, which provides a lot more technology detail than what is found in our very short and concise technology roadmap. In terms of the vision or the scenarios used for this energy storage roadmap, as Didier mentioned, we've based this work on our upcoming Energy Technology Perspectives 2014, and we use our 2-degree scenario, our low-carbon scenario, as the reference case for this roadmap. And in this scenario, as you can see in the figure before you, we see that we need to decarbonize the electricity sector. And in order to do that, we need to see quite a big shift in electricity generation from renewables, which we see rising from about 20% today up to about 65% by 2050, with the share of variable renewables supplying about 29% of total electricity production by 2050. The figure here looks only at 4 regions. Roadmap, we did some additional modeling focused on trying to quantify the potential of energy storage in 4 major regions, in China, India, the EU, and the US, where we see the share of variable renewables ranging from about 27% to 44% in 2050. This increase in such a large share of variable electricity supply will need to be accompanied by greater flexibility in the electricity sector. And our technology roadmap on energy storage focuses on the role of energy storage technology in providing this flexibility. As part of the roadmap work, we also developed a number of different scenario variants for energy storage. So there's the base 2-degree scenario that I've mentioned. We also developed a breakthrough scenario for storage, which assumes very aggressive cost reductions in a variety of storage technologies, as well as an electric vehicle scenario where demand response for smart charging of electric vehicle fleets provides additional flexibility in the system. And what you can see is that under the base 2-degree scenario, by 2050, to improve flexibility in the electricity system, we would need to invest in an additional 310 gigawatts of storage capacity in these 4 regions of the world. And it's important to highlight that these 4 regions will make up about 85% of total electricity demand by 2050. In the breakthrough case, we see that this potential for grid-connected storage could reach levels of about 520 gigawatts. And in the EV case, this would be slightly reduced to about 200 gigawatts, as the EV scenario assumes that about 25% of the daily electricity requirements from electric vehicles is controllable load and available for demand response. The roadmap also includes 3 country cases for the US, Germany, and China, which highlights national studies that have been developed to analyze the potential needs of energy storage in these countries. And the modeling results of those studies are very much in line with what we have presented in our 2-degree scenario. Now, just a little bit more details on our breakthrough scenario. The figure here shows that to get this breakthrough scenario, we assume that the cost reduction for a wide spectrum of electricity storage technology will fall quite sharply, reaching levelized cost of energy for bulk daily storage of approximately $90 per megawatt hour. This is an extremely ambitious case. It assumes that in the future, electricity storage technologies will be as competitive as the least expensive option currently providing arbitrage services, which currently today is a combined cycle gas turbine. The LCOE of energy and the electricity storage technologies in the breakthrough scenario then assumes that all the flexibility that's required in our future system will be served by electricity storage technologies. But it's important to highlight that these cost reductions are extremely ambitious, particularly for pump storage hydro and CASE technology, given that we have already seen quite significant reductions over the last few years. But it's possible that additional savings can be achieved through improvements in civil engineering and other technology improvements. For battery technologies, the cost reductions are extremely aggressive and would require a reduction in the specific energy cost of by a factor of about 10 times. So although we see very promising developments for a wide spectrum of electricity and thermal storage technologies, the cost reductions that are needed to see storage being deployed at much higher levels are ambitious. But we feel that a lot of dedicated R&D has been going into these technologies, and that in many cases there's room for optimism amongst these different storage technologies. The roadmap also tries to provide a set of recommendations covering quite a large number of technology areas. In the figure here, we are just showing a demonstration of the types of information that can be found in the roadmap. Here we show the milestones and recommendations that are going to be needed that cover quite a wide spectrum of technologies and applications. Here we highlight the need for the collection of better data on existing projects that will help us better assess and quantify future needs or potentials for energy storage. When we were developing the storage roadmap, we did struggle as part of the process in being able to collect a comprehensive database to provide better estimations of the potential of energy storage. And one of the key recommendations coming out of the roadmap is really to improve global data sets to allow us to better track progress on energy storage project development, but also to provide better global and regional potentials and targets. In addition to these cross-cutting recommendations, the technology chapter of the roadmap also provides clear, concrete recommendations and proposed timelines for technology development in electricity storage technologies covering short-term applications, distributed batteries, as well as long-term electricity storage. And for thermal storage technology, there are clear recommendations and milestones have been presented for low, medium, and high temperature applications. So I encourage everyone to take a closer look at these technology development milestones in the roadmap. As well as the recommendations that are more on a technology development basis, the roadmap also includes the chapter highlighting recommendations and actions that we need focused on policy, finance, and international collaboration. The recommendations that are shown in the slide here focus on policy and regulatory frameworks. One important point to highlight is that for storage to be more widely deployed, we need to address some of the current market and electricity barriers that are keeping energy or electricity storage technologies from realizing their true potential. There is a lack of price transparency on many of the current electricity grids, the high upfront costs, and significant price distortions in the energy markets are quite an obstacle to wider deployment of electricity and energy storage technologies. We need to have policies which will allow energy storage technologies to be compensated for the spectrum of services that they can provide to the energy system. And this should include identification and elimination of these price distortions that create negative cost impacts for storage technologies. It is critical that storage can be compensated directly for the different services that they are already providing to many of the markets. Furthermore, we recommend that we need to have policies that will enable benefit stacking by energy storage operators. This has already been proven in a number of studies to significantly improve the business case for energy storage projects. Benefit stacking allows technologies or systems to receive revenues for providing multiple compatible applications. One important policy to highlight that we've seen in the U.S. Are FERC orders 755 and 784, which demonstrates how access to ancillary service markets can have a very positive influence on the economics of these electricity storage projects. In the short term, we would like to highlight that priority should be given to encourage deployment of storage technologies in off-grid and remote communities where storage is already competitive or near cost competitive. For existing centralized storage facilities, efforts are needed to improve the efficiency and flexibility, which could help integration of higher levels of variable renewables. And then just to end, I'd like to highlight some of the key findings of the roadmap. First, that energy storage technologies can play an important role in supporting energy system decarbonization, but that storage is one of a number of key technologies that can help support energy sector decarbonization. It is not a silver bullet or the magic solution, but really one of a number of options for supporting wider decarbonization. Many storage technologies are already competitive today, while others, particularly some electricity storage technologies, still struggle with very high costs. But we see great potential in the near term in deploying storage technologies in smaller scale systems and for remote or off-grid applications. and large-scale thermal energy storage technologies are already extremely competitive and widely used for heating and cooling in many parts of the world. It has been encouraging to see quite a significant drive amongst public support for investments in energy storage R&D, which has helped to significantly reduce costs for a number of these technologies. However, costs still remain high in many of these technologies, and additional efforts are going to be needed on R&D to get these costs down. The optimal role of storage and the potentials that they can provide will really depend on quite a variety of factors that in many cases will be very regionally specific, and it will also determine how they can impact or compete with other non-storage technologies for providing flexibility to the grid and enhancing system efficiency. It's critical that we have the right market design and that power markets are adjusted so that energy storage technologies can be compensated for the suite of services that they can provide to the energy system. And finally, just to highlight that thermal energy systems can play a much bigger role in enhancing and improving the efficiency of our energy systems by reducing the amount of heat that is currently wasted. So, for example, large amounts of industrial waste heat is currently not being captured and used in other systems, and we see that this could be quite a tremendous potential in the near and long term. In terms of near-term recommendations and actions, we're recommending that incentives are put in place that will allow for the retrofitting of existing storage facilities to help improve their efficiency and flexibility. We also need to develop marketplaces and regulatory environments that enable accelerated deployment of energy storage technology, in part through limiting price distortion and enabling benefit stacking for systems. These will allow the technologies to be compensated for the wide range of services that they can provide over their lifetime. We also need to have early action on targeted demonstration projects that will help promising energy storage technologies document performance and safety ratings. We also need to share information and collect lessons learned and shared throughout quite a wide spectrum of storage stakeholder groups, nationally and internationally. And we also need to support greater investments in R&D for early stage energy storage technologies, including technology breakthroughs in high temperature thermal storage systems, scalable battery technologies, and hybrid systems. We should establish a comprehensive set of international standards in a manner that allows for incremental revisions as energy storage technologies mature. And we also recommend that there is an international and national data cooperation system which is established to help foster electricity storage research, and that will allow us to monitor progress and assess R&D bottlenecks. And then finally, we recommend that a analysis is completed at the regional level to provide better assessments of the value of energy storage in specific regions and energy markets, and that we can promote the development and adoption of these tools to help us better evaluate energy storage project proposals in the near term. And I just want to highlight that the roadmap and the technology annex, which provides quite a lot of real project examples, can be downloaded from the IEA website on the link that is shown in front of you. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Didier and Cecilia, for those presentations. And with that, we will now move on to the question and answer session of the webinar. And just want to remind the attendees today that if you have any questions, you may submit those questions through the questions pane, and I will read those and present them to the panelists for discussion. So I did receive quite a few questions during the presentations, and we'll start with the first one that I received and move through. And the first question that came in was, you included storage for heat and electricity, highlighting its ability to bridge those two energy systems. But you didn't include power to gas, but you did include hydrogen. Can you speak to where you would see power to gas technologies or whether it was out of scope of the report?
Yes, we do mention it very briefly in the roadmap, but what I'd like to highlight is that we're currently developing a roadmap on hydrogen technologies. So we decided at the beginning of the energy storage roadmap process to leave hydrogen evaluations for that particular roadmap. In the annex, there are also some more detailed discussions of country cases for hydrogen and power to gas options. So I encourage people to have a look at the annex to get more information on these technologies.
Thanks, Cecilia. And the next question asks whether the roadmap has a global focus or whether it is specific to the U.S.
The roadmap is global in scope, as are all of the IEA's roadmaps. But in the vision, because of the data limitations that we had, we focused on 4 key regions in terms of quantifying what was the potential for electricity storage under our 2-degree scenario. And there we provided modeling analysis for India, China, the EU, and the US. And as I mentioned, we have country case studies that highlight analysis that was done in the US, but also in Germany and in China. The recommendations for the roadmap are global in nature, but where possible, we also try to provide examples, recommendations of good policies and so forth that we see in different countries, including the United States, countries in Europe, and also in China, Canada, and many others.
Okay, and the next question asks, in regards to the electric vehicle scenario, is the cumulative capacity of car batteries included or not in your estimate?
It's not included.
Great. And
just to highlight that the electric vehicle batteries was, the electric vehicle scenario was done to show that if we could use the electricity storage potential that's represented in these electric vehicle fleets, we could actually reduce the need for daily storage across a number of categories.
Great, thank you, Cecilia. And the next question asks if there is an IEA implementing agreement that houses this comprehensive global data set, or if there's coordination underway for that.
So we have, this is Melissa Lott, so we have the IEA's implementing agreement, that's the Energy Conservation for Energy Storage implementing agreement. And they, if you go to their website online, you can see a number of reports that they have with case studies and information that has a lot of these data. A lot of them are used and referenced in the roadmap that you'll see. But they also, they were a part of this development process around the roadmap, and they can identify also in their work where the data gaps exist. So we would love to have comprehensive operational and investment in data for all the energy storage projects across the globe, but unfortunately, that's not, reality today, which, as we said, presented some challenges when we were doing our modeling and our projections to 2050.
Thank you, Melissa. And the next question points out that, Cecilia, you mentioned what cost reductions would be needed in storage technologies to meet the 2-degree scenario, but how does that compare with expected or likely cost reductions?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. It's at the heart of a lot of the discussions that we had in the development of the roadmap. So in the vision, you'll see that the levelized cost of electricity that's presented in our breakthrough scenario is $90 per kilowatt hour. And when you compare that, I mean, that's essentially saying that you're going to get other technologies. So there's 4 categories backing up of large-scale energy storage in the vision. And so you have pumped storage hydropower, so pumped hydro, you have CASE, you have flow batteries, and then you have another category of batteries, a more generalized battery. And we're saying that the levelized cost of electricity for those is going to get down to $90 per megawatt hour in that breakthrough scenario. If you look at that, depending on the specific type of technology that you're using and how it is used in the energy system is going to give you that answer as to how practical that is, or if we actually see that happening. And this is at the core of the concept of it's not necessarily about the technology that you're using, it's about how you're using it in your energy system, which will, show you if that's going to be a shorter-term cost-competitive technology or not. So Cecilia mentioned the benefit stacking concept, and when you have a market where you can benefit stack, you can use the technology for many applications, you'll see that technology, obviously bringing in, more money potentially as a result of being able to stack those things. So I wish that there was a clear-cut answer, but it's more complicated, and we do discuss that primarily in the chapter right after the vision in this roadmap.
I would like to add a general point on this. So what is important and what we try to do in this roadmap and also in ETP 2014 is also to compare storage with other tools for flexibility. So looking forward, it would be also important to see on one side what will be the demand for more flexibility of our system, and we expect with larger share of renewables that this demand for flexibility will increase very sharply, which creates a good background for R&D progress for storage technologies. And there was a question before about power to gas. It's very much linked, for instance, to the production of intermittent electricity, like in Germany, which is almost at no cost. And this provides a good case, of course, for developing power to gas technologies. But the other point is also to look how other options for flexibility will evolve in the future, and there will be competition between different flexibility tools. So one of the messages also of the roadmap is to emphasize the need for more R&D to encourage cost cutting in these different energy storage technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa and Didier. And the next question is more technology specific. It asks, what is the recommendations? What is the best way to reuse wasted heat?
There's a number of ways we can better use waste heat. If we just look at industrial waste heat, we have waste heat recovery systems that can be more widely deployed in industry. We could try to better use wasted industrial heat for district heating in nearby demand centers. But I think one of the areas where better utilization of waste heat struggles with is that it's not very well known today in our system how much waste heat is available and where it is available and where the consumption for this waste heat can be used. So one of the recommendations of the roadmap, and one that the IEA has had for quite some time now, is also to have a better evaluation of our energy system to match where we have potential for recovering this wasted heat and where we could better use the heat in local for local demand. So in the work of our cogeneration and district heating and cooling collaborative, we have tried to highlight the need for better studies that map better the availability of heat and supply, and to better match it to where heat is being demanded, so that we can take advantage of this potential, which could represent quite significant benefits in terms of improving the efficiency of the energy system.
Thank you, Cecilia. And the next question lays out the context a little bit first, so bear with me as I read through it, and then it has several questions at the end. I'll be happy to repeat any of it if necessary. The attendee states that, as you're probably aware of electricity storage, is questioning the fundamentals of the classic European electricity market architecture, which is set forth by the unbundling regimes pushed forward by the EU energy packages. Now, electricity storage seems encompassing the classic value chain separation and to be suitable for cross-chain applications, but it's not clear whether the European Commission will take a strong stance in favor of considering it a competitive rather than a regulated activity. So the attendee wonders, did you go through such kind of discussion in your analysis? What the IEA stance is, and how do you believe the creation of an ISO ownership unbundled from T&D could solve the issue of conflict of interest? And I'm happy to repeat any part of that for you.
Could you repeat it once more, please, so we make sure we caught it all?
Yeah, definitely. Just the questions, or would you like me to start with the context as well?
If you could go through the questions, Sean, that would be great. And we'll make
Great.
sure
Yeah, the first part of the question is, did you go through such kind of discussion in your analysis? What is the IEA stance? And how do you believe the creation of an ISO ownership unbundled from T&D could solve the issue of the conflict of interest?
Right, so in terms of discussion, so the roadmap contained within the text, there is discussion about how price distortions in the energy markets impact the ability for storage and other technologies to compete in the energy system. This was a discussion that we had in a number of the workshops, and you'll see at the beginning of the roadmap in the first section an outline of the 3 workshops that we had, where we brought in experts from industry and academia and governments to really get at the core of not only the technology challenges that energy storage is facing and opportunities, but also looking at the market environments, the other non-technical, barriers and incentives for energy storage deployment. So actually, when you go on to the roadmap itself, on page 47 of the roadmap, there is a table that talks about examples of government actions that have positively supported energy storage technology deployment. Now, this isn't an exactly yes answer, I think, to the question, how I'm hearing it, but it is giving examples of how different governments have set up environments in which energy storage is encouraged to deploy, or the deployment is accelerated. And so this is, a good start of just getting some examples of what governments have been doing and then what you may have seen as a result of that. And I think there was one other part to the question that I might have missed. In terms of ownership and unbundling, this is something that is discussed in the roadmap. So talking about the concept of pay-for-services model. So one of the keys to energy storage in terms of accelerating its deployment and getting it out there in these numbers is the concept of them being able to be paid for the services it's providing. So in some markets, it's not as clear-cut. In many markets, it's not as clear-cut as saying this is the service they're providing, this is how much it's worth, and they get paid for it. Many times, services are grouped together. The prices or the cost of the services is not as transparent as it could be. And so there is discussion on that starting in the Policy, Finance, and International Collaboration chapter that starts on page 46 in the roadmap. And be happy to, if anyone has specific follow-up questions to that after looking through that section, we'd be happy to follow up.
Great, thank you, Melissa. And the next question points out that one of the slides showed the possible percentages of variable renewable generation that could be integrated with the help of storage. And the numbers that you reflected show 50% or less. And they do note that those seem to be very conservative compared to what some of the EU countries like Germany, who are talking about 80%. Could you talk about how you came about those percentages and determine that?
Yes, just to clarify that the figure that I showed was the amount of variable renewable generation that our model picked up for those 4 regions of the world in their 2-degree scenario. This is based on our least cost optimization model, and so it's not really a limitation of how much renewables we think could be pulled into the energy system, but based on a least cost approach to the electricity system, how much variable generation was seen in the electricity system. So although we see that targets in some of the European countries in particular go for much higher levels, it is not really a limitation to how much renewables or variable renewables we could see in a system, but what our modeling exercise showed based, again, on this least cost optimization approach. So there's a wide range of low-carbon electricity technologies, and they can provide differing levels depending on the different conditions of these 4 regions that we evaluated. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. And the next question asks if there is any sensitivity analysis to less ambitious cost reduction targets.
So there's, that's a great question. Absolutely. So we're all nodding like that's thank you for whoever sent that one. So presented in the roadmap are 3 variants. So first we have the 2-degree scenario, which for storage specifically, it assumes that the cost of storage will be that of the lowest cost technology providing the service today. So that's pumped storage, hydropower, because we're talking about, again, grid-connected daily energy storage concepts. The second scenario is the breakthrough scenario. So this tests the side of, okay, what if we got down to that LCOE, that levelized cost of electricity of $90 per megawatt hour? And to be clear, that $90 would include the initial investment, operation maintenance, and the cost of electricity used to charge the storage facilities. So this would actually make them competitive with what we analyze as the least expensive option currently providing arbitrage services. So that's CCGT, operating at load factors of in the range of 30 to 60%. So you've got those 2. And then on the other side, in the electric vehicle scenario, we looked at that electric vehicle fleet as adding flexibility to the system, which actually, in effect, decreased the demand. So it made it so that you would see what happened if there wasn't as much, demand for these electricity storage. So we get a range there. Beyond that, in terms of changing individual cost parameters, those aren't presented in the roadmap. But those 3 variants are, which gives you a kind of range to give you that idea.
Great. And a question regarding the impact on prices. What would be the impact on electricity prices?
So this is something that we didn't analyze in terms of, if looking at what we presented. So we looked at China, India, the EU, and the United States, and then we also presented 3 kind of country-focused case studies for the United States, Germany, and China. We did not go into individual price changes within, markets. I mean, just within the U.S., you've got so many different markets going on, so many different prices of electricity.
And actually, it's probably the country. I think that the country cases show that when you have the appropriate market signals, you provide incentives to deploy and more rapidly energy storage technologies. And so there's a discussion in the roadmap about the importance of putting in place economic benefits for storage and the price signals that help to deploy more rapidly energy storage technology. So it's rather in the other way round.
Great, thank you. The next question that I have points out or asks if you're aware that the IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, they're also launching a roadmap for storage in the next few weeks. Have you had a chance to look at that, and do you know if the 2 publications are comparable?
We had in our in the IEA's technology road mapping process we had colleagues from ARENA at the workshops and providing review of the analysis. I'd like to highlight that I think the two projects aim to do slightly different aspects. And from my understanding, they're more still in the process. I don't know that they're actually releasing their roadmap in the immediate future. But we have been in touch with our colleagues at ARENA to make sure that we're not duplicating our efforts, particularly when we're developing these technology roadmaps. So they generally try to focus on different areas of the analysis.
Great, thank you, Cecilia. The next question asks if you have any suggestions on how to value storage systems according to the services that they provide.
That's a great question. So in terms of valuing energy storage, so we didn't in the roadmap go to the point where we suggested that certain countries, value or pay energy storage certain amounts. It's more about, valuing the service that they provide. And if there's another technology that can provide that service at a cheaper cost, then, that's how it goes, and that technology supplies it. The concept of benefit stacking that Cecilia brought up earlier, again, is a key one here, saying that oftentimes you have one technology, one energy storage technology that can provide multiple services over its lifetime. So they're both technically and operationally compatible. And so we don't say what a market should pay. We just say that the market should pay for the service.
Thank you, Melissa. And the next question refers to a specific kind of energy storage. It asks how superconducting magnetic energy storage can provide an electrical power of 1 megawatt for only $130 to $515. If at the same time ice storage, which is a very simple technology, is more than 10 times expensive. Could you just talk about those differences a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm flipping, sorry, real quickly in the roadmap so I can get the right page number. On one of the slides that Cecilia presented that talked about the different maturity levels of energy storage technology. The overall graph. Bear with me for 1 second here.
Yeah, no problem. We can also put, if you'd like, we can put the slides back up.
So it's the slide that is about the maturity of energy storage technologies. And what you'll see here, which is pretty key. So when you've got this curve that shows the different technologies, you'll see that in the case, Sean, was it ice storage and SEMES that you mentioned, I think?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So if you look, and they are on Cecilia's slides, which I think one of the questions asked if the slides would be available in the future, and they will be put online. But then on the roadmap, on page 16, figure 3, we talk about the maturity of energy storage technologies. And what you'll see on this curve is you'll see ice storage being in the section that's called demonstration and deployment. So on the y-axis, we have capital requirement times technology risk. And then across the x-axis, we have what could be loosely termed, if the folks in the audience are familiar with it, that's technology readiness level, or TRL. And so you'll see ice storage is much further along on that curve. Yeah, exactly, that slide. And so, this is a word of caution here, and you'll see it in the technology annex as well, that, this is what you're seeing with that technology. So in the case of SEMES, but SEMES is still, from our analysis, sitting in that research and development phase. So versus if you look on the, right-hand side, you're looking at pit storage or pumped storage hydropower. Those are deployed technologies that have been commercialized. And so those are prices that people have seen in practice in commercial facilities. So that's, very important to put those two in context. And thank you for asking that question.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. And the next question specifies solar power. It points out that solar power has, in some territories, seen support from government taken away, in some cases suddenly and with severe consequences. So how could the energy storage space remain secure from the possibility of similar political changes of heart?
Just to respond to that, I think it's a bit different in many cases, because the policies that we've had to deploy solar technologies I don't think, feed-in tariffs and so forth have really been the same than what we've been seeing for storage technologies, where a lot of the public focus or public investments have focused on early-stage R&D to help improve and demonstrate these technologies. Not that many governments have been mandating the deployment of storage technologies, where what we believe is that to help electricity storage or storage technologies develop its market, is what we really need to do is allow for these storage technologies to be paid for the services that they're being provided. So I think in terms of the incentives that we've seen for energy storage, they've been focused more at developing the technologies and getting the cost of the technologies down than necessarily high levels of deployment of the storage technologies because of the differences in the maturity level.
One thing I will say that we also talk about is around, I hate to harp on benefit stacking and having storage be compensated for the services they provide. But when you set up that type of a system, if the storage technology is able to provide that service in an economic fashion, it is in a more protected or secure space in that sense.
Great. Thank you, Cecilia and Melissa. Moving on to the next question, have you envisioned how different market arrangements would encourage or discourage storage technologies versus other solutions? For instance, would capacity mechanisms help or hinder storage?
So this is a question that I would want to follow up on because I know that we're running short on time today, and I would, if we could follow up on that question, I would hate to give a straight answer to just that, and I know that there's some people here at the IAA who have worked on that question in detail, and I've had really good discussions with them. So if we could follow up on that one, that would be great.
Definitely, I can. I will send that question to the three of you following the webinar, so that you can respond directly through email.
That would be great, and then we can give you a full answer.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. And so moving on to the next question, which asks specifically about a certain type of technology. They're wondering about hydrogen and its cost, and they state that it was presented that hydrogen costs are now $200 to $300 per megawatt hour. Is this the cost of hydrogen converted back into electricity by using fuel cells?
And I'm sorry, Sean, you just quoted a per megawatt hour number, 200, and could you tell me, because I'm looking, the chart that we have that is displaying the cost values is a per megawatt number, but you're talking about the sharp declines in cost needed. Is that what we're talking about for hydrogen?
I'm not certain.
So I'm going to go assuming yes, and yep. If not, please, whoever asked the question, please do follow up so we can address it if that's not the case. So on one of Cecilia's slides, Cecilia and Didier's slides, they talked about, it was titled Sharp Declines in Cost Needed, and it showed hydrogen that was sitting between $200 and $300 for the levelized cost of electricity per megawatt hour. And for this one, there are all the references for those cost numbers are included in the roadmap below the chart that has current costs and below included in that chapter. So I would encourage you to look at what those references are in terms of exploring that number in greater detail. Again, we didn't focus on hydrogen in this roadmap because we are going to be focusing on it in such great detail in its own roadmap. So I would certainly encourage you to look at that roadmap when it's released. But in the meantime, would refer to the references that are in here, in the roadmap, sorry.
Great, thank you, Melissa. And this next question relates back to the previous question on policy support, and asks, what is the impact of the cost of solar electricity, mainly PV, on the development of storage technologies, and what cost for PV is assumed?
I don't have that information with me. Again, if we could follow up on that one, that would be great. In terms of specific analysis to just the cost impact of storage on PV, that's not an analysis that we presented in this roadmap.
Okay. And that's another one I will forward on to you after Melissa.
I will say that if you do look at the percent of variable renewable generation, so you could put solar, both CSP and PV in there. When you're looking at higher levels of it, across our analysis and 3-country case studies that we see, you see increasing amounts of storage being deployed. So there is that link between the technologies there. So that is presented in the roadmap, and you see that. But again, we didn't separate out specifically PV or specifically CSP. And I don't know, I noticed one question that came in early that I wanted to just make sure we answered, that was about the best roles for storage and how it varies across regions, and a request that we elaborate a bit on that statement. And something I wanted to mention is in the roadmap, on page 14, there's a table that talks about the near-term suitability criteria for determining what the prime energy storage technologies are for deployment. And in here is generalized stuff on what technology examples or what types of technologies you might include in different systems. So for example, talking about large-scale electricity storage, so this could be pump storage hydropower, this could be case, it might provide the most near-term benefits in areas that have more developed electricity grids that can more easily accommodate these centralized energy supply resources. Where if you were in a remote or an off-grid community, this table also discusses how you might first look at smaller scale electricity or smaller scale thermal technologies. So that was a really great question. Thank you for it. And that is discussed pretty in detail in the early sections of the roadmap.
Thank you, Melissa. And the next question asks how you can deal with market arbitrage and assure that you are storing energy from renewables versus other sources.
That's an interesting question. I don't know that you can ensure that the electrons going into the system are from renewables or not, unless you have the case of a CSP facility with molten salt on site and they are storing the electrons from that CSP facility. But if they're just connected to the grid separate from a generation resource, I mean, it's getting whatever electricity is, being put through the wires. So, it's going to be a mix, assuming that you don't have a 100% renewable system.
Also, storage would be particularly needed when you have intermittent electricity coming from a variable energy electricity sources that would be variable. So in terms of incremental input to the grid, the odds are it will be from intermittent sources. And it also provides the rationale for deploying this storage technology.
Great, thank you, Didier and Melissa. And the next question from the audience points out that some technology analysts, including Lux and Navigant, have said that while lithium-ion will dominate the battery space in the next 5 to 10 years, in the long term, costs are not likely to fall enough for lithium-ion to remain dominant beyond that. So what can be done to ensure spending remains in R&D to find and develop alternatives instead of being spent to scale up production of lithium-ion batteries for short-term returns for the handful of companies already in the market? And then a second question for that is, will it come back to adding value to the services storage can provide rather than accommodating the storage product itself?
So this is a great question. So in the roadmap, when we present our technology recommendations, which includes a section that are recommendations for battery storage systems, we don't pick out one specific company or one specific design, and we do recommend a combination of not only supporting for the more mature battery technologies that are out there, helping them get up to scale in terms of production, but also supporting the more less developed battery technologies that still maybe haven't they aren't as mature on that scale. And Sean, can you tell me the second part of the question? I just lost it.
Yeah, it asks, will it come back to adding value to the services storage can provide rather than commoditizing the storage product itself?
Sure. So I mean, the value of storage is the service that it can provide in the energy system. I mean, that it does things that we value. And so a big key in accelerating the deployment that we present in here is about paying it for the services that the applications it's used for, the services that provide to the energy system. And that is, you know, at the heart of the discussion in this roadmap. And so while we certainly recommend that technologies, you know, they need further development in many cases, we also recommend that people take a hard look at their the energy market structure in their region if they want to effectively incentivize energy storage in the long run.
Great, thank you. And tied into that discussion on lithium ion, do you foresee a major breakthrough in battery technology or in batteries?
So there's certainly a lot. If you look at where research and development investment funds have gone, there's certainly a lot behind batteries. And there are many reasons for that, which are discussed in the storage roadmap itself. In fact, if you go to the electricity storage section, the technologies are grossly broken down in terms of short-term storage power applications, so flywheels, SMES, long-term energy storage applications, so pumped hydro, case, those types of technologies. And then there's a section on distributed battery storage technologies. In terms of the specific breakthrough, I wish I knew. That'd be awesome because I could invest in it today and make a lot of money tomorrow. But there is quite a discussion on that in the roadmap.
I mean, just to add to that, I think it's very difficult for us to really know where the breakthroughs will be coming. What we can say is that there's been a lot of attention given to battery technology, and there's quite a lot of optimism. Whether that will realize into a breakthrough or not, it's really quite impossible for us to predict. If we could, I think we'd all be doing slightly different things. But there is, I think, room or scope for optimism that we could see some real potential, particularly if we look at off-grid and for distributed systems. So we do see a lot of activity in this area. If that in the end will result in something, I think it's a matter of waiting and seeing.
It's also interesting to note, just along these lines, that on the thermal energy storage side, because in this roadmap, we're talking about electricity and thermal storage, defined in terms of their output, whether they're outputting electricity or outputting heating or cooling supply. But on the thermal energy storage side, there's a lot of small-scale storage capacity that's out there in existing infrastructure. So Cecilia mentioned it earlier in the presentation that in domestic hot water heaters with storage tanks, there's a lot of storage potential sitting there in terms of actually shifting when electricity is demanded to heat that water. And that storage capacity is available at a relatively small marginal additional cost. And so if the storage capacity could be utilized, you know, as in the example of France, you could see a significant impact. So in the case of France, you know, they're talking about a 5 gigawatt peak load shift by controlling this thermal storage capacity in existing infrastructure. So I don't know if you call that a breakthrough or not, if we could actually use it, but it could have a really big impact.
Great, thank you all. And one final question before we wrap up is, what are the main challenges faced by energy storage, and what can governments do to accelerate their development and deployment?
So the major challenges facing energy storage right now for some technologies is that they're not, you know, mature. They're not ready to commercially deploy, and they need time to both develop into the testing levels so that they can actually be demonstrated. But then beyond that, it's about learning from those demonstration projects and applying the lessons learned and the best practices learned in those demonstration projects to the future of those technologies when they're deployed. When you're looking at, you know, storage technologies, even the mature ones, we see that they struggle because, again, of what we've discussed in detail during this webinar, but the different market structures in which they're operating, where they at times struggle to be compensated for the services that they're providing. And so, you know, both on the technology side we see challenges, but we equally see challenges, and non-technical barriers. At the same time, with the opportunities. So again, in the storage roadmap, we present a series of examples of how technologies are being used, and then also what governments are doing to support the deployment of storage. And there's some really interesting case studies you can see, including, for instance, in California, when Southern California Edison last year, in the spring, they put out a bid for 50 megawatts of storage, and they got 500 responses. And then California in November then issued their energy storage mandate or requirement. But I mean, these are examples of governments and groups and industry and how they've worked to get storage to deploy more quickly.
If I can complement this right answer, I think we have a message in the roadmap and also in ETP, which is a bit two-pronged. On one side, we're saying we think there's a lot of hype on energy storage as being a silver bullet, as being the solution that would solve all problems of power markets. And there we rather say that it's one option among others. And in terms of cost competition, that not all technologies are sufficiently cost effective today to be presented as they too often are as silver bullets to solve all the problems of power system. But having said that, it means that in a long-term perspective, it is what we're trying to do in a roadmap. It's being positive, especially when we look at the need for storage in decarbonized power system in the next 30 years. By 2050, there is a need to really have breakthroughs in storage. And for that, there are a couple of things to do. Is first to provide the right market signals. It was mentioned several times in the discussion, to provide the right incentives to encourage innovation and provide the right contribution to storage in their different applications, because it's not one application, it's a different type of application, as it was explained during the presentation. The second thing is probably the more we will go to an electricity system which has more distributed generation, that would really provide strong incentives to develop also more solutions for electricity storage. And the third one is about the need for innovation, because we need a lot of R&D to develop new solutions, maybe obtain some breakthrough, but more generally for the different applications that we have looked into to be able to cut costs significantly to encourage commercial deployments. So it's a mixed message, but it's a call also for more R&D and more reflection in terms of the right regulatory framework that would incentivize more investment in storage facilities. Again, it's not a solution for tomorrow, but in a long-term vision of decarbonized electricity system, we are definitely convinced that storage has a very important role to play. Thank you.
All right, thank you again to each of the panelists for that great discussion based on the attendee questions. Those are all the questions I received. So at this point, before we take our quick survey, I'd just like to provide each of you an opportunity for any closing remarks or final statements that you might have for the audience.
I've done it so far. Thank you very much to all of you for your attention.
I just encourage you to go onto the website to download both the technology roadmap as well as the technical annex that provides quite a wealth of information and a summary of the current projects that we see in quite a wide range of different energy storage technologies, and to keep looking out at new technology roadmaps that the IEA will be developing, including one for next year on hydrogen, which will look more further at hydrogen storage options.
Yes, I would just encourage not only, if you have specific questions that are, let's say, targeted towards buildings or heating and cooling, there are technology roadmaps that specifically address those types of areas within the energy sector, and storage is included in some cases in those discussions. So I would certainly encourage you to go to the website and look at the different roadmaps and follow up with questions. And thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you again, Melissa, Cecilia, and Didier for those presentations and for the discussion. And at this point, we'd just like to ask our audience to take a minute to answer a quick survey on the webinar that you viewed today. So we just have 3 short questions for you to answer. Heather, display that first question, please. And that question is, the webinar content provided me with useful information and insight. And the next question, the webinar's presenters were effective. And the final question is, overall, the webinar met my expectations. All right, thank you to the audience for answering our survey, and on behalf of the Clean Energy Solutions Center, I'd like to extend a hearty thank you to all of our expert panelists and to our attendees for participating in today's webinar. We did have a terrific audience, very much appreciate your time, and I invite our attendees to check the Solutions Center website over the next week if you would like to view the slides and listen to a recording of today's presentation, as well as previously held webinars. So the PDF copies will be put up there shortly. The audio recording will take about a week to go up there, so check back for those. And we also invite you to inform your colleagues and those in your network about Solutions Center resources and services, including the no-cost policy support. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you again at future Clean Energy Solutions Center events. And this concludes our webinar.